Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Monday's edition, and we're broadcasting from the beautiful studios here in Irvine, California. Happy to have you with us today. Hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. A lot of great college and pro football action, and we're going to get to that later in the show. But to start us off, we're going to get into some great political news, especially if you're a Republican. All right, we've been talking about this literally for months. And the generic ballot, that basically says, simple question, just two choices. Would you vote for a Republican or would you vote for a Democrat? That number's been fluctuating +2, -2, +5 even. Excuse me, but it's been consistent where Republicans have been in the lead on this. And now we have a situation where the favorability rating of Republicans has extended to a 5-point lead, 44 to 39%. I'm going to explain to you what that means. The generic ballot is still R+2. Now, people are starting to vote next week, literally. I mean, so you can say the election is, 30 days off. Not really. The election's about a week off. So when you see numbers like this, I think the trends are starting to appear. Now, that doesn't mean Republicans are going to necessarily win more races. Remember, we here on the show have been telling you, in Congress, we think the win total is going to be somewhere in the 15 to 20 range. In the Senate, again, we think it's going to be a 50-50 Senate at the end of the day, but things could change. You could see a +1R, +1 Democrat. You could see a +2R or a +2 Democrat. That one's still too close to call, as a lot of the races are. But this is favoring the Republicans considerably. So, why is this our lead story coming out? Because people are going to vote literally next week. And you look at it and you say, okay, well, Mark, we know the economy's got problems. We know inflation's still running around 8%. Rents are still high. Grocery prices are high. We'll get into gas prices later in the show. And, you have these Democratic cheerleaders come on the cable networks and the national networks, and they're all cheering for the Democrats. But you know what? A longtime Democratic operative, Al Sharpton, we don't talk about Al Sharpton very often. He's mainly been relegated to the morning schmoes show, Joe Scarborough, former Republican turned Democrat. Sharpton's comment is worth noting because he said Democrats are not connecting with Black and Latino voters. And he's correct. And a lot of people say, well, Mark, how could he possibly be correct? Well, we've said this countless times on this show. It doesn't matter whether you're white, Black, Latino, Asian. Most people want the same things in life. They want stable prices. They don't want to see these skyrocketing inflation numbers. They want to see a steady job market. And you would think, oh, Mark, unemployment rate's under 3.5%. Yes, it is. But wages aren't keeping up with inflation. That's a big problem. The Democrats, rightly or wrongly, and I say it's rightly, they are being blamed for the crime, and it's well-deserved. The crime issue is sticking to the Democrats because they're the ones responsible for it. You didn't see any Republicans out there pushing to no bail in these deep blue cities. I mean, crime is rampant. And it's not just the deep blue cities. It's everywhere. So if you're not keeping up with inflation and you're concerned about crime, and guess what, folks? The crime predominantly affects Black and Latino voters. That's why Sharpton's made the statement. And then you take that with the fact that, 2 million people streaming across the border. And then you have Democrats out there. What are their main issues they're talking about? Abortion and climate change. Well, I know abortion is important to a lot of people on the left and the right. But the interesting thing about it is, when you aggregately put together Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, it's not even in the top 5 issues, folks. Think about that for a minute. Collectively, it's not even in the top 5. And where it is really important, it's important among Democratic voters that are already voting for Democratic voters. And again, going back to what I said, whether you're black, Asian, Latino, African American, you name it, doesn't matter. People want to make sure they have a good job, they have steady wages, inflation's not high, they feel safe in their home for their families. And that's not the case in a great many places. It was crazy. On these Sunday shows, remember, we watch them so you don't have to. And even we had to skip through the channel. It was so bad. But ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, they're all literally bringing guests on cheering for the Democrats as they see a sinking ship led by Joe Biden. It's insane, folks. I mean, they're literally getting on there talking about, we have to vote Democrat to save the Republic. Oh, no. People aren't stupid. While the Democrats are out there pushing abortion, voting rights, climate, do you know how many people care about climate? You give them a choice of lower gas prices or, quote, saving the planet on the climate, they'll take lower gas prices 9 out of 10 times. And like that great Democratic strategist James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. Bill Clinton listened to him. Joe Biden's not, of course. So when you have a situation like this, and you have Democrats pursuing these policies that the overwhelming majority of independents, let's call it what it is, they're not going to support these policies in a general election. Yeah, certain Democrats are going to vote abortion's more important to them. Certain people on the right are going to vote Republicans, more important to them. But that's not the key issue. And the mainstream media, they're pulling out all the stops, everything, to try to shift the focus. And folks, it's not shifting. We got results over the weekend. This is really good if you're a Republican, because the Senate right now could go either way. In Nevada, Adam Laxalt running for the Senate, he's 2 percentage points up. That's in the race for Senate. And Lombardo's up +3 in the governor's race. Both of these men are Republicans. So let's talk about the Senate a minute. It looks like Nevada could be a possible flip. Where does the GOP have risk? They have risk in Pennsylvania. Now, Dr. Oz has closed the lead with that crazy lunatic Fetterman. He's now only down 2.5 points. One poll he's down 3. Why is that significant? Because a month or 2 ago, or both, pick your poison, he was down by double digits. So to make up 7 or 8 points in 30 days is significant. Maybe people in Pennsylvania are finally waking up to the fact they don't want some tattooed hoodie individual representing them in the United States Senate. I mean, we don't begrudge the guy for having a stroke. That happens. But that doesn't mean just because he had a stroke, he's qualified to sit in the United States Senate. He's not. His policies are to the left of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Who wants to have a guy represent you that can't talk and walks around in a hoodie all day long? And will vote against the economic interest of Pennsylvanians. Now, I wouldn't want him as my representative, and bear in mind, he would be replacing a Republican senator. So, does Pennsylvania, which has right now 1 Democrat and Republican, do they really want to put John Fetterman in there to represent him? The guy can barely speak, wears a hoodie, tattoos all over him, and I don't want to offend the tattoo people, but again, this guy's a combination. He can't speak, he's tattooed up, wears a hoodie everywhere, is to the left on all the issues. Who wants a guy like that to represent him? Hopefully Pennsylvania will see through this. But if they don't and Fetterman wins, then Laxalt potentially pulling off a win in Nevada could offset a GOP loss in Pennsylvania. That'd be 1 pickup for the GOP in Nevada, 1 loss in Pennsylvania. If Dr. Oz pulls it out and Laxalt wins, it's going to be a great night for Republicans. because it looks like Ron Johnson's doing well against Mandela Barnes. He's another one, far left-wing radical liberal. Wisconsin, they don't want to have left-wing radical liberals representing them. The race in Georgia, very close. Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock could go either way. The race in Ohio is very close. That could go either way too. Same thing, North Carolina, that's close. A lot of them are close, 2 or 3 points here and there. But I really believe as it gets closer and closer when people are voting and they just look at the horrific, terrible Democratic economic record and the status of our country right now, millions of people pouring across the border, record high inflation, gas prices, they've gone down in part of the rest of the country, not in California, folks. I'll tell you how bad it is out here. The average price hit a new record in Los Angeles, $6.47 for regular unleaded. That means if you're paying premium unleaded, for those of you who've had premium unleaded needs, you're up near $7 a gallon. Oil's up 4% in the market today. Now, why is that? Because OPEC Plus, which is a group of oil-producing countries, the old OPEC plus a handful of others, is talking about cutting back production 1 million barrels a day. Well, if you cut back production 1 million barrels a day, look, the U.S. is not able to release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. That ended in September, after Biden depleted our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. You take that, factor it in with a real million barrel a day cut, and if China comes back on after Xi's election, you're going to see gas prices back up near $100 a barrel. And you know what? It'd be really fitting for the Democrats to try to defend that record as we go into Election Day with gas $90 to $100 a barrel. Then all the gains that basically where Biden tried to fool the American people in thinking there was a reason gas was coming down other than supply demand would be exposed. And like we've told you, oil goes into everything. These far left-wing radical greenies don't think so, but it does. So, when you factor all this in, I'm sitting there saying, what message are Democrats running on? The only thing they're running on is, oh, Republicans are bad and abortion, and they're running on issues that don't hit the top 4. Do you know how many people care about that January 6th commission? Only hardcore left-wing Democrats. Most independents couldn't care less about it, like 60-40, and Republicans, it's like 90-10. So that's sort of where we are. State of election here coming in on Monday, October 3rd. Again, less than 30 days to go to vote. Well, in most states, less than about a week where voting starts. And we had 2 Democratic politicians. I got to tell you something. These are some of the dumbest people. I mean, I try to be respectful because of the office they hold. But boy, it's tough sometimes. I mean, Kamala Harris, folks, this is literally, I don't know if you could rank her any vice president's worse. I know a lot of people will say, well, Agnew was, and he got indicted. What comes out of her mouth is some of the dumbest damn stuff I've ever heard. She made this comment about, well, relief money's going to go based on hurricane equity. What? Yeah. She actually made a statement saying, well, we're going to have equity on these relief, basically implying that poor neighborhoods would be given more, quote, equity, more doling out of dollars based on the net worth and income of your district. No, Vice President Harris, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Aid goes to those communities most harmed. Doesn't matter your income level. And you know what? That statement drew withering criticism, not only from the right, but also from the left. The White House couldn't even explain it. They had to dodge the question. Every time that White House press secretary, John Pierre, gets asked a question that she can't answer, change the subject. That's how bad these Democrats are. They really believe this garbage. and a hurricane comes through Florida, strikes Fort Myers area, really devastating. Not just that area, but other parts of the state. But the pictures you see are of Southwest Florida, Pine Island, Sanibel, Captiva. I've been there many, many times to those places. Did a lot of business on the west coast of Florida. Folks, they took a hit. And to have the Vice President of the United States try to make a political statement about, quote, equity for hurricane relief? I mean, this woman steps in it everywhere she goes. She's dumber than a rock. I mean, she's over in Korea and basically complimented and made a statement about North Korea being a Republic of North Korea, an ally of the U.S. I mean, when does it stop? I got to tell you, the only thing worse than Joe Biden running for re-election in 2024 would be if he runs for election and she keeps this dunce on the payroll. I mean, she is absolutely toxic. And I say that respectfully. I mean, you know, I don't want to disrespect. I'm not disrespecting her personally or disrespecting the office. But my God, when she makes these dumb damn statements like this, you just got to cringe. Speaking of dumb statements, imagine if a Republican said this. You know where I'm going with this, folks. You know where I'm going. Pelosi's statement on the illegal immigrants. Oh, somebody's got to pick the crops. Can you imagine if a Republican said that? By God, you would have every liberal cable network, national news, ABC, NBC, CBS, you name them. Front page headlines in New York, Republicans insult Latinos. But no, Pelosi comes out and says, we need someone to pick the crops in Florida. That's going over folks like a lead balloon. Come on, she's the Speaker of the House. Isn't she supposed to, quote, represent the little people? It's the Democratic policies letting all these illegals in the country causing this. And then have Pelosi come on here and say, well, we got to have somebody pick the crops. Come on, Florida, let's let them in. Oh, my goodness. I mean, the Speaker of the House. I'm talking about the Speaker of the House. I was previously speaking about the Vice President. Unbelievable. And the media just, for the most part, lets it go. Now, the media didn't let the White House go over Kamala Harris's comments. And again, Pelosi doesn't speak for the White House, so she can answer on her own. But, oh my God, can you imagine that? They'll defend Pelosi, but had a Republican said something that stupid? Front page news, lead story, everywhere. It's amazing. It just is amazing. And people look at this and they go, why would we ever trust a Democrat to run anything? You can't. These are the most out-of-touch people, folks. And I don't want to hear anything about moderate Democrats. There is no such thing as a moderate Democrat. They all vote hardcore left every time. Manchin's the best example. We thought he was a moderate. He was. And then he turned his back on moderate Democrats. He's just an example. But again, you can't trust Democrats. Look at the shape they have our country right now. And this is just in 2 years. Can you imagine how bad it would be if we didn't take the House or the Senate? At least if we take the House and or the Senate, we've got a governing control on these radical ideas these people have. And again, I'll give Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema credit. Without them, we'd have horrific. It'd be way worse. Thank God for Manchin and Sinema last year. Oh, my goodness. All right, let's talk about what's going on and something really, really serious. The Ukrainians, after a lot of success in the north, it's sort of embarrassing. The Russian government, Putin, come out and they announce they've annexed 4 territories. Annex 4 territories, do a sham election, plant the Russian flag. Guess what? Part of the territory in the north they're not even in control over. The Russian troops fled. And what happens when they flee? Radicals in Russia blame the generals. Oh my God. They say, we need to put a machine gun in their hands, send them to the front line. No, the Russian troops left because they have no business being in Ukraine. It's not their country. They're tired of dying on the front line for Putin. Hundreds getting killed every day. But now, the Ukrainian troops, they also gain ground in the south. Russia annexed the territory near Kherson. And Ukraine has a big push to take back territory in the south. How's that going to look in Russia when, the annexed territory, Ukrainians are taking it back in the north and the south? And that army, look, H.R. McMaster, former not chief of staff, but he was Trump's point person on military activities. He was the chief head of policy for a national security advisor. That's what he was. He says the Russian army's at a breaking point. Now, I think he's right. Troops are fleeing, I think the city's called Lyman, after being surrounded. Remember, about 5,000 Russian soldiers were surrounded. Somehow they got out, fled. Folks, it's great if you're Ukrainians. They're using U.S. and NATO weapons. Putin's getting backed into a corner. There's citizens. You might ask, well, where's all the protests? There are protests in Russia. Thousands got arrested. But Russians are seeing this on their own TV screens now, where they're seeing, hey, we didn't win the battle. We're annexing territory. Ukrainians have their flag up. What's going on here? Because the government's lying to the citizens about what's really going on. And you're hearing, quote, threats of nuclear attacks. The U.S. has came out and made it real clear they're not going to tolerate that. Let's hope it never gets to that point. But the question you have to ask yourself is, with the successful gains that the Ukrainians have, are the Russians going to back off? Probably not. They're going to continue to send conscripts into battle and die. Word will get back real quick. That's not a ticket that people want to go to. Heck, some of the conscripts that got called up weren't even qualified to serve. They were too old, too fat, had no training. When you send a conscript into battle with no training, all they're going to do is get killed. A lot of them are going into battle and they're asking, how do they surrender? They don't want to fight. This is Putin's war and a handful of oligarchs that support him. It's not the common Russian. Keep an eye on that, folks, because what could go wrong usually does when it comes to war. Bear in mind, the Russians spent 20 years in Afghanistan before they finally had to pull out of there with their tails between their legs. Here, their losses are horrific. And the mothers and the fathers seeing their kids come home in coffins, not good. And it's going to get worse. Now, a couple other things. Let's talk about the markets a little bit. Okay. England, Great Britain backed off their tax cuts to top earners, and that basically stabilized the bond market. And Mark, why are you talking about interest rates in Britain? Because it affects the global economy. Once they backed off an easy money plan, interest rates stabilized in Great Britain. Remember the pound that we talked about last week was in danger of sinking parity to the dollar? It got all the way down to 105. Well, it's up to 112 right now. It's actually a good thing, because a lot of pension funds in England, you don't want to see pension funds go belly up. Japanese yen. Now here's an opposite story. The Japanese continue to have easy money policies. The yen's now fallen to 145. That's despite tightening everywhere else in the world. Other world economies are tightening. Japan still has easy money policies. Why is that? Because they have an aging population. Now here in the U.S., we started off the first trading day of October. The stock market's up about 2% today. Is it a relief rally? We don't know. Is it something sustainable? Maybe. But interest rates in the U.S. fell. And as interest rates fall, the value of those bonds goes up. So the 2-year note, which was around 4.2 last week, is now under 4.1. I think it was trading at 4.08, airing of the show. That's good news. So, stock market rallying, inflation's still high, but we didn't have a meltdown, and that's really important. Look, the markets are in bear market territory. So a big run up like today, as of this show, the Dow was up 500 to 600 points, S&P around 100, NASDAQ up about 170 points. So is it a quick rebound? Maybe. We'll see. And again, we hate saying this, folks, but every Monday we come in here and we talk about things going on in the country. and I hate to say it, but we have a regular Monday Chicago report. You could change the numbers, but the headline's the same every week. Over the weekend, 33 people shot in Chicago, 5 killed. Did you hear one word mentioned about this on the mainstream media? No. No, of course not. Because the mainstream media is trying with little success to cover up how soft on crime the Democrats are. That's the narrative that's taking place. Democrats soft on crime, collectively all over the country. Chicago happens to be the poster child. And it is horrific. It's like a shooting gallery up there in certain parts of the city. Every weekend we come in here on a Monday, it's the same thing. 50 shot, 40, 30 shot, 5, 8, 10 killed. Never mentioned in the national media. Why? It's not that they don't care. They don't want you to know. They're trying to cover up the Democrats' soft on crime failure. Voters are noticing it, folks. Believe me. You know, you go to these blue cities, you ask yourself, why would anyone want to be there? It's not safe. You know, when you're letting people out on bail that have no business being out on bail, that are committing more crimes, particularly in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, these soft on crime Democrats. And again, when you ask the White House about it, it's like they can't talk about it. Well, we don't, it's nothing we can. Come on, it's a joke. If you didn't have all these no bail laws, you didn't have these liberal judges letting these criminals out of jail, we're not talking about petty stuff, folks. We're talking about armed robbery, attempted murder, manslaughter. These aren't exactly property crimes we're talking about here. That's right. And the mainstream media, which is pro-Democrat, doesn't want you to think that Democrats are responsible for this. Of course they are. Why would they not be? Crime soaring to an all-time high. Do you feel safe in blue cities? Probably not. But we're not trying to pick on Chicago. It's just every week, wash, rinse, repeat. And the mainstream media does not want to cover it. It's insane. So, a lot on the plates, internationally, domestically, markets. We're going to get some more information this week as to these inflation numbers. Are they continuing? Will they be sticky? What's the employment report? Bear in mind, new month, we get the unemployment report this coming Friday. We'll get other economic data throughout the week to see if any of these policies are helping. I don't know about you, but every time you go to the grocery store, I'm not seeing any relief. Rent prices aren't going down. Wages, not keeping up with inflation, but they're still high. You know, the Federal Reserve has a tough task. They have to cool this economy, and they're trying to do it without getting us into a recession. That's a tough nut to do. Can they do it? I hope so. I hope they stay vigilant and don't listen to all the pom-pom boys that come on CNBC and Bloomberg and Fox Business and talk about, the Fed's going to put us in recession. No, Democrats put us in recession by spending way too much money. Always think about that, folks. It's always Democrats that want to spend your money and waste it. Yeah, the Fed made some mistakes last year, keeping rates too low for too long, and they're making up for lost ground now. But don't ever think about it. I saw a headline, if Democrats lose the House, they'll go on a spending palooza. I believe that. So, keep the faith, folks. Get out and vote. Don't assume anything. Everybody's vote counts. And we encourage you to get out and vote as this most important midterm election comes up. And we're sticking by what we said before. We think we will take 15 to 20 seats in the House. Bear in mind, the last election was pretty good to Republicans. They picked up some ground. But 15 to 20 seats, we think, in the House. The Senate could go either way. +1 Republican, +1 D. If you held me to the fire, I would say the Senate will probably remain 50-50. But we're optimistic it could be +1 or +2. And there are some indications. Washington State, Colorado, those races could be tight. I got news for you, folks. If we win or come real close in Washington or Colorado in those Senate races, it's going to be a bloodbath for Democrats. Well, we're going to keep an eye on it. All right, that's it for today's show. A lot of recap. Hope everyone enjoyed their football weekend. A lot of crazy games going on. Oh, boy. The NFL's got to deal with this concussion protocol issue. Big outcry over that. I'll tell you one thing. I'll give you one suggestion. Get rid of that damn artificial turf. I don't know anyone that likes it. I mean, put it back on grass. That'll soften the blows. That turf is just bad stuff. Bad stuff. I get it if you play in an indoor stadium, you got to have it, but there's some things where, heck, they can grow grass indoors now. There's got to be something to make that turf not the concrete that effectively it is. All right, folks, we'll cut through the propaganda, keep you informed. Be back, same bat time tomorrow, same bat channel. See you on Tuesday. Have a good evening.